The antiseptic smell of the hospital clung to my scrubs even after I'd changed into my worn jeans and faded Northwestern sweatshirt. My fingers fumbled with my locker combination, 2/14/19, Tessa's birthday, as exhaustion pulled at every muscle in my body. 12 hours on the ICU floor, 3 code blues, and one family that had screamed at me because their father didn't survive despite everything we'd done. I was so tired I could barely remember driving home. The November wind off Lake Michigan cut through my thin jacket as I hurried across the employee parking lot toward my ancient Honda Civic. Chicago winters were brutal, but this year they felt especially cruel. Or maybe everything felt harder now that I was always looking over my shoulder, always checking my rearview mirror, always wondering if Ryan had found a way around the restraining order again. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out with trembling fingers, my heart rate immediately spiking. Unknown number. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the decline button. It was probably nothing. A telemarketer, a wrong number. But it could also be him, calling from yet another burner phone, using another friend's cell, finding another way to remind me that he was still there, still watching, still waiting. The call went to voicemail. I didn't breathe again until the notification disappeared from my screen. "Tara," a voice called from behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly dropped my phone, my other hand instinctively reaching for the pepper spray I kept clipped to my purse strap. It was just Marcus, one of the orderlies, jogging to catch up with me. "Sorry, didn't mean to startle you," he said, concern creasing his forehead. "You okay?" "Fine," I lied, forcing my racing heart to slow. "Just tired. Long shift." Marcus studied my face for a moment longer than was comfortable. "You've been jumpy lately." "More than usual." "Everything all right at home?" Home. The word felt hollow. The small 2-bedroom house in Pilsen that my grandmother had left me should have felt like a sanctuary. Instead, it had become another place where I didn't feel safe, where every creaking floorboard made me wonder if Ryan had finally made good on his threats. "Everything's fine," I repeated, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. "Just tired. You know how it is." Marcus didn't look convinced, but he nodded anyway. "Get some rest. And Tara, if you ever need anything." "I know. Thanks, Marcus." I climbed into my car and locked the doors immediately, a habit I'd developed over the past 6 months. The engine turned over on the 3rd try. I really needed to get the starter looked at, but that was just one more expense I couldn't afford on a nurse's salary, while paying for a lawyer to keep my restraining order enforced. The drive home took 20 minutes through streets that grew progressively rougher as I left the hospital district behind. Pilsen was gentrifying slowly, but my street still had more boarded-up buildings than renovated ones. The streetlights were unreliable, casting pools of sickly yellow light every few dozen yards, leaving long stretches of shadow in between. I parked in front of my house, scanning the street before I got out. Mrs. Kowalski's living room light was on next door, the blue flicker of her television visible through the curtains. The Torres family's porch light was out again. Everything looked normal, but normal didn't mean safe anymore. My neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, had been watching Tessa since I'd left for my shift at 6 a.m. My daughter was probably already asleep, worn out from a day of kindergarten and whatever adventures Mrs. Kowalski had planned. The thought of her small, warm body curled up in her princess sheets was the only thing that kept me moving forward sometimes. I locked my car and hurried up the cracked walkway to my front door, keys already in hand. The porch light I'd left on this morning was dark. The bulb must have burned out. I made a mental note to replace it tomorrow, adding it to the endless list of things that needed fixing. Things I couldn't quite afford to fix properly. The key turned in the lock with a familiar click. I pushed the door open, stepped inside, and immediately knew something was wrong. The air felt different, disturbed, like someone had just walked through it. My hand was still on the doorknob, my body half in, half out of the house, when I heard it. a floorboard creaking in the living room. Not the usual settling sounds of an old house, but the deliberate weight of a person shifting their stance. Someone was in my house. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to turn around and sprint back to my car, to call 911 from the safety of Mrs. Kowalski's porch. But Tessa was upstairs, asleep, vulnerable. I couldn't leave her. My hand tightened around the pepper spray as I eased the door shut behind me, trying to keep it quiet. The living room was to my right, separated from the small entryway by a wide archway. The stairs were directly ahead. If I could just get to Tessa, grab her and run. I wouldn't do that if I were you. The voice came from the darkness of the living room. Male, deep, with the faintest trace of an accent I couldn't quite place. Not Ryan's voice. Someone else. My blood turned to ice. "Who's there?" I managed to whisper, my thumb finding the trigger on my pepper spray. "Get out of my house or I'm calling the police." "No, you're not." The voice was calm, almost conversational. "Because if you do, Ryan Davies will be halfway to Mexico before they can pick him up. And we both know he'll come back. They always do." Ryan. This stranger knew about Ryan. A lamp clicked on in the living room, and I saw him for the first time. He sat in my grandmother's old armchair like he owned it, one ankle crossed over his knee, his posture relaxed in a way that made my skin crawl because it was so utterly confident. He was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with dark hair swept back from a face that was all sharp angles and harder edges. His suit probably cost more than I made in a month, charcoal gray with a subtle pinstripe, perfectly tailored to his lean, powerful frame. But it was his eyes that held me frozen in place. Dark, almost black in the dim light. They assessed me with an intensity that made me feel like he could see straight through to my bones. This wasn't someone who made idle threats. This was someone who followed through. "My name is Tommy Castellano," he said, as if we were meeting at a dinner party instead of in my living room in the middle of the night. "And before you panic, your daughter is safe upstairs. I made sure of that first." The mention of Tessa unlocked something in me. Rage flooded through the fear, hot and immediate. "You went near my daughter?" I went upstairs to confirm she was sleeping peacefully in her room with the pink unicorn sheets and the nightlight that projects stars on the ceiling, he said evenly. I needed to know where she was before Ryan got here. Before Ryan. I couldn't finish the sentence. The implications were too horrible. Tommy Castellano uncrossed his legs and leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped between his knees. Ryan Davies called in a favor tonight with some very unpleasant people. People who, for the right price, would help him violate his restraining order one final time. He's planning to break in here tonight around midnight. He's going to take your daughter, and he's going to make it look like you were an unfit mother who drove him to desperate measures. The room spun. I grabbed the doorframe to steady myself, my mind racing. How do you know this? Because I make it my business to know things, Tommy said. And because 3 months ago, you saved my father's life. I stared at him blankly. What? Anthony Castellano, 72 years old, admitted to your ICU with a massive heart attack on August 15th. You were his nurse for 3 days. On the second night, you noticed something the doctors had missed, a change in his medication that was causing a dangerous interaction. You fought with the attending physician for 20 minutes until he agreed to review the case. That decision saved my father's life. The memory surfaced slowly through my exhaustion. An older Italian man, distinguished even in a hospital gown, who'd held my hand and called me an angel when I'd checked his vitals. His son had visited every day, sitting by the bed reading the newspaper in Italian, but I'd never seen his face clearly, always too busy to do more than nod politely as I worked. I don't understand, I said. Why are you here? Tommy Castellano stood, and I realized he was taller than he'd seemed sitting down, at least 6 feet, with the kind of presence that filled a room. Because my father raised me to believe in debts of honor. You saved his life. That means I owe you a debt, and Castellanos always pay their debts. He moved toward me and I stepped back instinctively, my hand tightening on the pepper spray. He noticed and stopped, holding his hands up slightly in a gesture that might have been meant to be reassuring. "I'm not going to hurt you, Tara," he said, using my name for the first time. "I'm here to make sure Ryan Davies never hurts you or your daughter again." By breaking into my house, I couldn't keep the bitter edge from my voice. By being here when he breaks in, Tommy corrected, which will be in. He checked his watch, a platinum Rolex that caught the lamplight. Approximately 15 minutes. The words hit me like a physical blow. 15 minutes. Ryan was coming in 15 minutes, and I'd walked right into this nightmare with no idea it was waiting for me. "I need to call the police," I said, fumbling for my phone. "And tell them what?" Tommy asked reasonably. "That a man you don't know is sitting in your living room warning you about a crime that hasn't happened yet? By the time they take your statement and decide whether to send a patrol car, Ryan will be gone with your daughter. He was right. I hated that he was right." "What do you want from me?" I whispered. Tommy's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained hard. "I want you to go upstairs, get your daughter, and pack a bag for both of you. Nothing obvious, just essentials. Then I want you to go out the back door to the alley where my associate Victor is waiting with a car. He'll take you to a safe apartment I own in Lincoln Park. You'll stay there until I've handled the Ryan Davies problem permanently." "Permanently?" The word stuck in my throat. "Legally," Tommy clarified, though something in his tone suggested there might be multiple definitions of that word. "He'll be arrested tonight attempting to break into your home. He'll be held without bail. And he'll be facing federal charges that will ensure he never bothers you again." It sounded too good to be true. Which meant it probably was. "Why would you do all this?" I asked. "A man like you doesn't just help people out of kindness." A ghost of a smile touched Tommy's lips. "No, I don't. I do it because of honor, because of debt, and because I don't tolerate men who hurt women and children. Ryan Davies is about to learn that there are consequences for his actions." Footsteps on the porch outside made us both freeze. Heavy, deliberate, trying to be quiet, but failing. Ryan always walked like that, like he was trying to sneak but was too angry to manage true stealth. "Go," Tommy said quietly, his whole demeanor changing in an instant. The civilized veneer dropped away, revealing something cold and dangerous underneath. "Get Tessa. Back door. Now." I didn't argue. I ran for the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Tessa's door was open, just as I'd left it this morning. She lay curled on her side, her favorite stuffed unicorn clutched to her chest, her dark curls spread across her pillow. "Tessa," I whispered, shaking her gently. "Baby, wake up." Her eyes fluttered open, confused and sleepy. "Mommy?" "We're going on an adventure," I said, keeping my voice calm even as I heard the sound of someone jimmying the back door downstairs. Ryan was here. "But we have to be very quiet, okay? Like we're playing the quiet game." Tessa nodded, still half asleep. I scooped her up, grabbed her favorite blanket and Mr. Unicorn, and held her close as I moved toward the stairs. From the living room, I heard voices. "Hello, Ryan?" Tommy's voice was pleasant, almost friendly. "We've been expecting you." I didn't wait to hear Ryan's response. I ran down the stairs, through the kitchen to the back door that Ryan had apparently given up on, and out into the cold November night. A black SUV idled in the alley, its windows tinted dark. The back door opened as I approached, and a man with a scar across his left cheek gestured for me to get in. "Victor?" he said simply. "Get in. We need to go." I climbed into the warm interior, Tessa still half asleep in my arms. Victor closed the door and got behind the wheel, pulling away smoothly, just as I heard raised voices from inside my house. "Mommy?" Tessa mumbled against my shoulder. "Where are we going?" I held her tighter, breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo, feeling her warm weight against my chest. "Somewhere safe, baby," I whispered. "Somewhere very safe." As Victor drove through the dark streets toward Lincoln Park and whatever this new life would bring, I realized I had just put my faith in a Mafia boss I'd met 5 minutes ago. A man who scared me almost as much as Ryan did, but in a completely different way. A man who had been waiting in my living room like he belonged there, like he had every right to reorganize my life. A man who had just saved us. I didn't know if that made Tommy Castellano my savior or my new captor. I had a terrible feeling I was about to find out. The apartment in Lincoln Park was nothing like my house in Pilsen. Victor pulled the SUV into an underground garage beneath a gleaming high-rise, using a key card to access a private elevator that required another code to operate. Tessa had fallen back asleep against my shoulder, her breath warm and steady against my neck, oblivious to the way my entire world had just shifted on its axis. The elevator doors opened directly into the apartment. Not a hallway, not a shared floor, but straight into a living space that took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, the lights of Chicago spreading out like a blanket of stars. The furniture was modern and expensive, all clean lines and soft leather, nothing like the mismatched secondhand pieces I'd cobbled together over the years. "Mr. Castellano said to make yourself comfortable," Victor said, his voice surprisingly gentle for a man who looked like he'd seen his share of violence. "The master bedroom is through there." He pointed to a hallway. "There's a smaller bedroom next to it that's been prepared for your daughter. Kitchen is fully stocked. You need anything, you call this number." He handed me a card with a single phone number printed on it. No name. "Someone will answer 24 hours a day." I stood in the middle of the living room, holding Tessa, feeling completely out of my depth. "How long are we supposed to stay here?" Victor's expression was unreadable. "As long as it takes. Mr. Castellano will be in touch." He moved back toward the elevator. "Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except Mr. Castellano or myself. Understood?" I nodded, too overwhelmed to argue. The elevator doors closed, and suddenly I was alone with my sleeping daughter in an apartment that probably cost more per month than I made in a year. The lock on the elevator was electronic, requiring either the key card or a code from inside. I engaged both, then carried Tessa to the smaller bedroom. It had been decorated for a child. Soft pink walls, a white bed with a canopy, shelves lined with new toys still in their packages. Someone had anticipated our arrival, had prepared this space specifically for Tessa. The thought should have comforted me. Instead, it made my skin crawl. How long had Tommy Castellano been planning this? How long had he been watching us? I tucked Tessa into the bed, pulling the soft duvet up to her chin. She stirred slightly, her hand reaching for Mr. Unicorn, and settled back into sleep with a soft sigh. I stood there for a long moment, watching her chest rise and fall, my heart aching with a fierce protectiveness that had only grown stronger since the day she was born. Everything I did for her. Every double shift, every night eating ramen so she could have fresh fruit, every smile I forced when I wanted to scream. It was all for Tessa. To give her the childhood I'd never had, to keep her safe, to make sure she never felt the kind of fear that had become my constant companion. And now I'd brought her here, to the home of a man I didn't know, a man whose name carried weight and fear in equal measure. Tommy Castellano. Even I had heard the rumors, whispered in the hospital break room when someone came in with injuries they couldn't explain, when families refused to talk to the police about who had hurt them. The Castellano family controlled the South Side. Everyone knew that. They were involved in everything from construction to waste management, legitimate businesses that served as fronts for less legitimate operations. Protection rackets, gambling, loan sharking, the kind of enterprise that left bodies in its wake when someone stepped out of line. And I had just let the head of that family decide my fate. I left Tessa's door cracked open and walked back to the living room, my legs shaking with delayed adrenaline. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out with trembling hands. 3 missed calls from Mrs. Kowalski. 2 text messages. "Tara? Are you home?" I heard shouting. "Should I call the police?" I typed back quickly. "Everything's fine. False alarm. Thank you for watching Tessa today." The lie felt necessary. I didn't know how to explain what had happened. Didn't know what I was allowed to say. Tommy had told me to trust him, to let him handle Ryan. But trust was a luxury I'd learned not to afford. Another text came through, this one from an unknown number. "Ryan Davies has been arrested. Breaking and entering, violation of restraining order, possession of an illegal firearm. He won't make bail. Sleep well. TC." I stared at the message, my mind struggling to process it. That fast? It had been less than 30 minutes since I'd fled my house. How had Tommy managed to have Ryan arrested, processed, and denied bail in half an hour? Unless he'd planned it all in advance. Unless he had contacts in the police department, judges in his pocket, a system that moved at his command rather than following the normal rules. I should have been horrified. Instead, I felt a wave of relief so profound, it made my knees weak. Ryan was in jail. For the first time in 6 months, I didn't have to worry about him showing up at Tessa's school, at the grocery store, at my house in the middle of the night. For the first time since the divorce, I could breathe without checking over my shoulder. I sank onto the leather couch, my body finally allowing itself to acknowledge how exhausted I was. The clock on the wall read 11:47 p.m. In 13 minutes, Ryan would have broken into my house, would have gone upstairs to Tessa's room, would have taken her while I was at work, and I would have come home to an empty house and a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. But Tommy Castellano had been there instead. "A debt of honor," he'd said, because I'd saved his father's life. It seemed almost archaic, like something from another century, another world. But I'd grown up in Chicago, had seen enough of the old neighborhood dynamics to know that some families still operated by those rules. Honor, loyalty, blood oaths that mattered more than legal contracts. The Castellanos were one of those families. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number, but the area code was local. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the decline button. But what if it was about Tessa? What if something had happened at the house? I answered. "Hello? Tara Mitchell?" A woman's voice, professional, with a slight accent I couldn't place. "My name is Sofia Castellano. I'm Tommy's sister. He asked me to call and make sure you and your daughter arrived safely." His sister? I hadn't known he had a sister. "We're fine," I said cautiously. "Thank you." "Good." There was a smile in Sophia's voice. "I know this must all be very overwhelming. My brother has a tendency to take charge in situations. But I want you to know that you're safe now. Both of you. Tommy takes his obligations very seriously, and he considers you and your daughter under his protection." Protection. There was that word again. It sounded like safety. But I'd learned that protection often came with strings attached. "I don't understand why he's doing this," I admitted. "I was just doing my job at the hospital. Any nurse would have done the same thing." Sophia was quiet for a moment. "You don't know much about my father, do you?" "I remember him. He was kind. He thanked me." "My father is the reason Tommy is who he is today," Sophia said softly. "When Tommy was 16, our mother was killed in a car accident. It wasn't an accident. Someone wanted to send our father a message. Tommy found out who did it, and he handled it. He was just a boy, but he became a man that day. He took over parts of the family business that my father couldn't manage anymore, built them into something bigger. something stronger. But he never forgot what it felt like to lose someone he loved because of someone else's cruelty. I closed my eyes, processing this. He sees Ryan as someone who could hurt Tessa the way his mother was hurt. Exactly. Sophia's voice was approving. And Tommy doesn't let threats to children stand. Ever. It's one of his few absolute rules. A mafia boss with rules about protecting children. The irony wasn't lost on me. Your brother scares me, I said honestly. Sophia laughed, a warm sound that surprised me. He should. Tommy is dangerous when he needs to be. But he would never hurt you or your daughter, Tara. That I can promise you. Now get some rest. I'll come by tomorrow morning to check on you and meet your little girl. I have a feeling we're going to be good friends. She hung up before I could respond. I set my phone down on the coffee table, staring at it like it might offer me answers to questions I didn't know how to ask. The apartment was silent, except for the gentle hum of the heating system and the distant sounds of the city beyond the windows. I should sleep. I had to work tomorrow. Today, actually, since it was now past midnight. But my mind was racing, replaying everything that had happened, trying to find the angle, the trap, the cost I'd have to pay for this protection. Nothing was free. I'd learned that lesson over and over. Ryan had seemed charming at first, too. Attentive and generous. Buying me gifts I couldn't afford. Taking me to restaurants I'd never been to. It wasn't until after Tessa was born that I'd seen his other side. The jealousy, the need to control, the rage when I didn't follow his script. The divorce had been ugly. He'd fought for custody, even though he'd never shown any interest in being a father. It was about control, about punishing me for leaving. The restraining order had barely slowed him down. He'd found ways around it, using friends to deliver messages, showing up places he knew I'd be, always just inside the legal boundaries until tonight. Tonight, he'd finally crossed the line, and Tommy Castellano had been waiting. I stood and walked to the windows, looking out at the city spread below. Somewhere out there, Ryan was sitting in a cell, probably still not understanding what had happened. He'd thought he was above consequences, that his connections and his charm would always get him out of trouble. He'd been wrong. And I'd been saved by someone even more dangerous. Someone whose consequences would be far more permanent if I crossed him. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a strange sort of calm settling over my exhaustion. For 6 months, I'd been fighting alone, stretching every dollar, working double shifts, jumping at shadows. For 6 months, I'd been waiting for Ryan to escalate, knowing it was coming, unable to stop it. Now someone else was handling it. Someone with power and resources I couldn't imagine. Someone who had decided I was worth protecting. The question was why, and what it would ultimately cost me. I checked on Tessa one more time, still sleeping peacefully, her hand curled around Mr. Unicorn, then made my way to the master bedroom. It was enormous, with a king-sized bed covered in white linens, an ensuite bathroom with a soaking tub and walk-in shower, and a closet that was bigger than Tessa's entire bedroom back home. Back at the house, I corrected myself. Not home anymore. I didn't know if I could ever go back there, if those rooms would ever feel safe again after tonight. I stripped off my clothes and stood under the hot shower, letting the water wash away the hospital smell and the fear sweat and the feeling of Ryan's presence that still clung to my skin. The bathroom was stocked with expensive toiletries, everything I could possibly need. Someone had thought of everything. That someone was probably Tommy Castellano. I dried off with a towel so soft it felt like a cloud, and found a drawer full of new pajamas in various sizes. I chose a simple set and climbed into the bed, my body sinking into the mattress with a sigh of relief. When was the last time I'd slept on sheets with a thread count higher than 200? My phone buzzed one final time. I picked it up, expecting another message from Sophia, or maybe Mrs. Kowalski checking on us again. Instead, it was from Tommy. The debt is paid, but I'm not done protecting you yet. Sleep well, Tara. Tomorrow we talk about what comes next. I stared at those words for a long time, my heart doing something complicated in my chest. Not fear, exactly. Not attraction. Though I couldn't deny that Tommy Castellano was one of the most compelling men I'd ever encountered. Something else. Something that felt like the ground shifting beneath my feet. Like standing at the edge of a cliff and knowing I was about to jump. What comes next? I set my phone on the nightstand and closed my eyes, exhaustion finally dragging me down into darkness. My last thought before sleep claimed me was that I'd spent 6 months running from one dangerous man, only to place myself in the hands of another. The difference was that Tommy Castellano had given me a choice, even if it hadn't felt like one in the moment. He'd given me a way out when I'd had none, had stood between my daughter and harm, without asking for anything in return. Except now he wanted to talk about what came next. I was terrified to find out what that meant. But I was even more terrified of going back to the way things were before, to the fear and the exhaustion and the constant looking over my shoulder. Maybe Tommy Castellano was dangerous. Maybe his protection came with a price I couldn't yet see. But for tonight, for the first time in 6 months, Tessa and I were safe. And that was worth almost anything. Morning came too soon. Pale sunlight filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows and pulling me from the first deep sleep I'd had in months. For a few disoriented seconds, I didn't remember where I was. The bed was too soft, the room too quiet, the ceiling too high. Then it all came rushing back. Ryan, Tommy Castellano, the flight through the dark to this apartment that felt more like a luxury hotel than a home. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. 7:23 a.m. I was supposed to be at work in 37 minutes. I sat up too fast, my head spinning. There was no way I could make it to the hospital on time. Not from Lincoln Park, not without my car, which was still parked in front of my house in Pilsen. My house where Ryan had tried to break in. My house where Tommy had been waiting like some dark guardian angel. A soft knock at the bedroom door made me jump. Ms. Mitchell? A woman's voice, accented like Sophia's, had been on the phone. I have coffee and breakfast. May I come in? I pulled the covers up to my chin, suddenly aware that I was wearing borrowed pajamas in a borrowed apartment, dependent on the generosity of a man I barely knew. Just a minute. I found a robe hanging in the closet. Of course there was a robe, perfectly sized, and wrapped it around myself before opening the door. A woman in her 40s stood there with a tray, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, her expression professionally pleasant. I'm Maria, she said. I manage Mr. Castellano's properties. I brought you breakfast and some things you might need. She nodded toward the bed where I now noticed shopping bags I hadn't seen in my exhausted state last night. Clothing for you and your daughter. Basics and toiletries. Sophia will be here at 9 with more personal items. I stared at the bags, then at Maria, my mind struggling to catch up. I need to call my work. I'm supposed to be there in half an hour. Maria's smile was sympathetic. Already handled. Mr. Castellano called the hospital administrator this morning. You've been granted emergency family leave, fully paid, for the next 2 weeks. Your supervisor has been notified. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. He can't just do that. I'll lose my job. You won't. Maria set the tray on a table near the window. Mr. Castellano made a very generous donation to the hospital's new cardiac wing. They were happy to accommodate his request for your leave. Please, sit, eat. You'll need your strength for the day ahead. I wanted to argue, to insist that Tommy Castellano couldn't just rearrange my life like pieces on a chessboard. But the truth was, he already had. And part of me, a part I wasn't ready to examine too closely, was grateful. The thought of going to work today, of pretending everything was normal while Ryan sat in a jail cell and my entire world had shifted overnight, had been making my stomach churn. I sat. Maria poured coffee from a silver pot, the aroma rich and complex, nothing like the bitter brew from the hospital break room. There were croissants still warm from the oven, fresh fruit cut into perfect pieces, yogurt in a crystal bowl. "Your daughter is still sleeping," Maria said. "I checked on her 20 minutes ago." Beautiful child. The mention of Tessa made my chest tighten. I should wake her. She'll be confused. Let her sleep a little longer. Children are resilient. She'll adapt. Maria moved toward the door. "I'll be in the kitchen if you need anything. Mr. Castellano will arrive at 8:30. Tommy was coming here. Of course he was. "We needed to talk about what comes next," his text had said. I thought I'd have more time to prepare, to figure out what I wanted to say, how I wanted to handle this impossible situation. I forced myself to eat, my nursing training reminding me that I needed fuel even if my stomach was in knots. The food was incredible, each bite better than anything I'd eaten in years. It was a reminder of the world Tommy Castellano inhabited. A world where breakfast came on silver trays and emergency family leave could be bought with a donation. I was still in that robe, my hair uncombed and my face bare, when the elevator chimed at exactly 8:30. Through the open bedroom door, I heard Maria greeting someone, heard a deep voice responding in Italian, heard footsteps crossing the living room toward where I sat frozen with a coffee cup halfway to my lips. Tommy Castellano appeared in the doorway, and I was struck again by how much space he seemed to occupy, how his presence changed the air in the room. He wore another perfectly tailored suit, this one charcoal with a subtle sheen, his dark hair swept back from his face, his jaw clean-shaven. He looked like he'd slept well and had all the time in the world. "Tara." He nodded, his dark eyes taking in my disheveled appearance without judgment. "I hope you slept well." "Like the dead," I said, then winced at my choice of words. "Sorry. Long night." A slight smile touched his lips. "Indeed." He moved into the room with that same confidence he'd shown in my living room, pulling out the chair across from me and sitting without asking permission. "We have things to discuss." "So your text said." I set down my coffee cup, my hands trembling slightly. "Starting with the fact that you can't just take over my life like this. I have a job, responsibilities, a daughter to raise. I can't just disappear into your luxury apartment and pretend the real world doesn't exist." Tommy leaned back in his chair, studying me with those intense dark eyes. "The real world, as you call it, nearly resulted in your daughter being kidnapped last night. Ryan Davies had a bag packed with clothes for Tessa, a car waiting 3 blocks away, and a fake ID with his name and her photo. He wasn't planning to visit Tara. He was planning to disappear with her." The words hit me like a physical blow. I'd known Ryan was dangerous, had known he was escalating, but the premeditation of it, the planning, made my blood run cold. "How do you know all this?" "Because I make it my business to know." Tommy's voice was matter of fact. "When my father told me about the nurse who saved his life, I made inquiries. Learned about your situation, about Ryan Davies and his pattern of harassment. I had him investigated 3 months ago, Tara. I've been watching him watch you ever since. 3 months. He'd been protecting me for 3 months without my knowledge. The thought should have felt like a violation. Instead, it made something loosen in my chest, a knot of tension I'd been carrying for so long I'd forgotten it was there." "Why?" I asked. "Why go to all this trouble for someone you don't even know?" Tommy was quiet for a moment, his gaze drifting to the windows and the city beyond. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, almost reflective. "My mother died when I was 16. I've told you this, or Sophia did. What I didn't tell you is that I could have prevented it. I knew there was a threat. I'd heard whispers, seen the signs. But I was young and arrogant, and I thought I had time to handle it properly, through the right channels." He looked back at me, and I saw something raw in his expression, a glimpse behind the carefully constructed mask. I was wrong, and she paid the price for my hesitation. So now, when I see a threat to someone under my protection, I don't hesitate. I don't wait for the right moment. I act. "I'm not under your protection," I said, but the words lacked conviction. "You've been under my protection since the day you saved my father's life," Tommy corrected. "You just didn't know it, and now that you do, we need to establish some ground rules." I bristled at his tone, at the assumption of authority. "I don't take orders from you." "No," he agreed, surprising me. "You don't. But you will accept my help, because the alternative is going back to your house where Ryan's friends know you live, going back to a job where your schedule is public record, going back to a life where you're vulnerable and alone with a 5-year-old daughter to protect." He leaned forward, his intensity ratcheting up. "Ryan Davies is in jail, but he's not without resources. He has friends, family, connections. He'll make bail eventually, even with the charges I made sure were filed. And when he does, he'll come for you again. But this time, he'll be smarter, angrier, more dangerous." My hands clenched in my lap. "So what are you suggesting? That I hide here forever?" "I'm suggesting that you let me finish what I started last night." Tommy's voice was calm, implacable. "Let me ensure that Ryan Davies is never in a position to hurt you or Tessa again. It will take time, a few weeks, maybe a month. During that time, you stay here where I know you're safe. You rest. You spend time with your daughter without constantly looking over your shoulder. And when it's done, when I've made sure every door is locked and every threat is neutralized, then you can decide what you want to do next." It sounded reasonable when he laid it out like that. Logical, even. But I'd learned to be suspicious of things that sounded too good to be true. "And what do you get out of this?" I asked. "What's the price for all this protection?" Something flickered in Tommy's eyes. "Respect, maybe. The satisfaction of a debt paid. Nothing more, nothing less." "I don't believe you." The words came out before I could stop them. "Men like you don't do anything without expecting something in return." Tommy stood, moving to the windows with his hands in his pockets, his shoulders outlined against the bright morning light. "You're right to be suspicious. In my world, everything has a price. But sometimes, Tara, the price has already been paid. My father is alive because of you. That's worth more than money, more than favors, more than any debt you could possibly owe me." He turned back to face me. "But if you need a transaction to make this feel acceptable, then consider this. You'll help me with something while you're here. Nothing illegal. Nothing that will compromise your principles. Just consulting work." I stood as well, my robe clutching around me like armor. "What kind of consulting?" "I'm working on legitimizing more of my family's business interests," Tommy said, moving away from the shadows and into the light, as it were. "One of those interests is healthcare, hospitals, clinics, rehabilitation centers. I need someone who understands that world from the inside, someone who can tell me where the problems are, how to fix them, how to make them actually serve the communities they're supposed to help." I stared at him. "You want me to help you launder money through healthcare facilities?" "I want you to help me create healthcare facilities that actually work," he corrected, a edge entering his voice. "My mother died in a hospital that was understaffed and underfunded because the board cared more about profit margins than patient care. I don't want to run facilities like that. I want to run places like the one where you saved my father's life. Places where nurses are valued, and doctors actually have time to do their jobs, and patients don't die because someone cut corners." The passion in his voice surprised me. This wasn't the cold, calculating Mafia boss from last night. This was someone who genuinely cared about something beyond power and profit. "That's actually a good idea," I admitted. The hospital where I work is constantly short-staffed. We're always scrambling, always trying to do more with less. It's dangerous for everyone. Then help me fix it. Tommy moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the morning light. Not just for my facilities, but maybe, eventually, for the hospital where you work. I have resources, Tara. Let me use them for something good. I wanted to say no, wanted to maintain my independence, my moral high ground. But the truth was, I'd dreamed of working in a hospital that actually valued its staff, that had enough nurses and enough supplies and enough time to give patients the care they deserved. I dreamed of not being exhausted all the time, of not having to choose between going to Tessa's school play and picking up an extra shift to pay for her winter coat. How long? I asked. How long do I have to stay here? Until Ryan is handled and you feel safe enough to make your own decisions without fear, Tommy said. Could be 2 weeks, could be a month, but I promise you, when you leave here, you'll be able to go back to your life without constantly looking over your shoulder. A sound from the hallway made us both turn. Tessa stood in the doorway, Mr. Unicorn clutched to her chest, her dark curls a tangled mess around her face, her eyes wide as she took in the unfamiliar room and the strange man standing too close to her mother. Mommy. Her voice was small, uncertain. Where are we? I crossed to her immediately, scooping her up into my arms even though she was getting too big for it. We're at a friend's house, baby. Remember I told you we were going on an adventure? Tessa looked at Tommy over my shoulder, her expression serious and assessing in that way 5-year-olds had. Is he the friend? Tommy's entire demeanor changed. The intensity, the underlying threat, all of it melted away as he smiled at my daughter. I'm Tommy, he said, his voice gentle. And yes, I'm a friend of your mother's. You must be Tessa. How do you know my name? Tessa asked, suspicion clear in her tone. My daughter, already learning not to trust easily. Your mom told me, Tommy said smoothly. She also told me you like unicorns. He nodded toward Mr. Unicorn. That's a very handsome unicorn. His name is Mr. Unicorn, Tessa informed him, because he's a boy unicorn. Of course. Tommy's smile was genuine, transforming his face into something almost boyish. That's a perfect name. The elevator chimed again, and Maria called out, Miss Sophia is here. A moment later, a woman swept into the room like a force of nature. She was beautiful in the way Italian women often were, all curves and confidence. Her dark hair falling in waves around her shoulders, her clothing impeccably stylish. She looked like Tommy, same dark eyes, same high cheekbones, but where he was all sharp edges and controlled danger, she radiated warmth. Finally, Sophia exclaimed, moving straight toward me and Tessa. I've been dying to meet you both. Tara, I'm Sophia, Tommy's far more charming sister, and you must be Tessa. She addressed my daughter with the kind of respect adults rarely showed children. I brought you something. She held out a stuffed animal, not a unicorn, but a beautiful white Pegasus with glittering wings. I thought Mr. Unicorn might like a friend. Her name is Aurora, but you can change it if you want. Tessa's eyes went wide. She looked at me for permission, and I nodded, still processing this whirlwind of a woman. Tessa reached out tentatively and took the Pegasus, holding it next to Mr. Unicorn. They're going to be best friends, Tessa declared, just like Mommy and her friend Jenna. Sophia clapped her hands together. Perfect. Now, Tessa, I have a very important question. Do you like pancakes? With chocolate chips? Tessa asked hopefully. Is there any other kind? Sophia grinned. Come on, Maria and I will make them while your mom and my brother finish their boring adult conversation. We can eat in the kitchen and you can tell me all about Mr. Unicorn and Aurora's adventures. Tessa looked at me again, seeking approval. I nodded, and she wiggled out of my arms, taking Sophia's extended hand. The two of them headed toward the kitchen, Tessa already chattering about how Mr. Unicorn could fly because he had magic, leaving me alone with Tommy once more. "Your sister is—" I struggled for words. "A lot," Tommy finished. "But she's good with children. Tessa will be safe with her." The word safe hung in the air between us. That's what this was all about, really. Safety. Something I hadn't felt in so long I'd almost forgotten what it was like. "Okay," I said, the word coming out before I'd fully decided. 2 weeks. I'll stay here for 2 weeks while you handle things. I'll help you with your healthcare facilities. But I want updates about Ryan. I want to know what's happening, not just be kept in the dark." Tommy nodded. "Agreed. Full transparency. And when the 2 weeks are up, I get to decide what happens next. Where Tessa and I live, whether we keep accepting your protection. All of it." "When the 2 weeks are up," Tommy said, his dark eyes holding mine, "you'll be free to make whatever choice you want. I promise you that." I wanted to believe him. God help me. I wanted to believe that this dangerous, powerful man was truly offering me safety with no strings attached, that his code of honor was real, and not just another manipulation. Maybe I was a fool. Maybe I was walking into a different kind of trap. But standing there in that borrowed robe in that luxury apartment with my daughter's laughter drifting from the kitchen, I couldn't bring myself to care. For the first time in 6 months, someone else was handling the crisis. Someone else was strong enough to stand between us and harm. Someone else was letting me rest. "Okay," I said again, this time more firmly. "We have a deal." Tommy extended his hand and I took it. His grip was warm and strong, his skin slightly callous despite his obvious wealth. It was the handshake of someone who had worked for what he had, who understood the value of a promise given. "Welcome to my protection, Tara Mitchell," he said softly. "I won't let you regret this." From the kitchen, Tessa's delighted squeal echoed through the apartment, as Sophia apparently did something entertaining. Tommy's expression softened as he heard it. "My sister wanted children," he said quietly. "But she can't have them. Medical issue. She'll spoil Tessa rotten if you let her." The vulnerability in his admission caught me off guard. "You love your sister very much." "She's family." Tommy released my hand, stepping back. "Family is everything. It's why I do what I do, why I'm building what I'm building, to protect the people I love." And somehow, in the space of 12 hours, Tessa and I had become people he'd decided to protect. I didn't fully understand why, didn't trust that it would last. But for now, for these 2 weeks, I would let myself accept it. I would let myself rest. And then, when the time came, I would figure out what came next. The days that followed took on a surreal quality, like I was living someone else's life instead of my own. Sophia became a constant presence, showing up each morning with fresh pastries and an infectious energy that Tessa adored. She took us shopping, not to the discount stores I was used to, but to boutiques where sales clerks brought us coffee and treated Tessa like a little princess trying on dress after dress. I protested, of course. "This is too much. I can't accept all this." Sophia had waved away my concerns with a perfectly manicured hand. "You're doing consulting work for my brother. Consider it professional attire. Besides, Tessa needs a proper winter coat. Chicago winters are brutal." The coat she bought for Tessa cost more than my monthly grocery budget used to be. It was soft purple wool with silver buttons, and Tessa wore it everywhere, even inside the apartment, twirling to make it flare out around her legs. I tried not to think about how easy it was to get used to this life. How quickly Tessa adapted to having fresh fruit with every meal, to the endless selection of toys Sophia kept producing, to Maria's patient attention whenever she wanted to help bake cookies. How quickly I adapted to sleeping through the night without jerking awake at every sound, to drinking good coffee instead of bitter break room sludge, to having time to actually think instead of just survive. Tommy came by every afternoon around 3, always impeccably dressed, always with that same controlled intensity. We'd sit in his study, a room I hadn't noticed that first night, tucked behind the living room, and he'd show me files on the healthcare facilities his family controlled or was planning to acquire. "This one is a nursing home in Bridgeport," he said on day 4, sliding a folder across the desk. "It's failing. Understaffed, patients aren't getting proper care. The current owner wants to sell before the state shuts it down. What would you do with it?" I'd opened the folder, scanning the financial reports and inspection records. "The problem isn't the building, it's the staffing model. They're trying to run it with minimum wage CNAs and 1 RN per shift for 60 patients. That's insane. You need at least 3 RNs and double the CNAs, plus better pay to retain good people." Tommy had leaned back in his chair, watching me with those dark eyes. "That cuts into profit margins significantly. Then you charge more or accept lower profits," I'd said bluntly. "You can't provide quality care on the cheap. It doesn't work. People suffer." A slow smile had crossed his face. "That's exactly what I wanted to hear. My financial people keep telling me to maximize profit per patient. I keep telling them that's how you end up with a facility like this one, barely functional and about to be shut down." "So you're really serious about this," I'd said, surprised despite everything. "About running ethical healthcare facilities." "I told you." His voice had been quiet but firm. "My mother died because people cut corners. I won't do the same." These afternoon sessions became the anchor of my days. Tessa would be with Sophia or Maria, usually doing some craft project that left glitter all over the kitchen, and I would sit across from Tommy Castellano, discussing staff-to-patient ratios and the importance of mental health support for nurses, and how to create a facility that actually served its community, instead of just extracting profit from it. He listened to everything I said, took notes, asked intelligent questions. Sometimes he'd push back, pointing out financial realities I hadn't considered. But more often, he'd nod and make a call right there, instructing someone to implement the changes I'd suggested. It was intoxicating, having that kind of power. Having my expertise valued and acted upon immediately, instead of being ignored by hospital administrators who cared more about quarterly reports than patient outcomes. On day 6, Tommy arrived with a different kind of folder. "Update on Ryan Davies," he said, his expression hardening as he slid it across the desk. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside were police reports, court documents, photographs. Ryan in an orange jumpsuit, his face haggard and angry. A list of charges: breaking and entering, violation of restraining order, possession of an illegal firearm, attempted kidnapping. Attempted kidnapping? I looked up sharply. How did you prove intent? The bag in his car with Tessa's clothes, the fake ID, the flight confirmation for a one-way ticket to Mexico City in 2 days. Tommy's voice was matter of fact, but I could hear the anger beneath it. My people found all of it and turned it over to the police. The DA is very interested in prosecuting this case. Your people. I set down the papers. You mean you had them plant evidence? I mean my people found evidence that was already there and made sure it got to the right authorities. Tommy met my gaze directly. Ryan Davies planned to kidnap your daughter, Tara. That's not fabricated. The evidence confirms what he intended to do. I wanted to argue, to insist on moral high ground, but the truth was I didn't care. Ryan had been planning to take Tessa. The bag, the ID, the ticket, those were real, whether Tommy's people had found them or planted them. My daughter was safe because Tommy had stopped it. What happens now? I asked. He'll be convicted. With his history of violating the restraining order and the clear evidence of planning a kidnapping, he's looking at 15 to 20 years. More if I can connect him to some other activities he's been involved in. 15 to 20 years. Tessa would be an adult before Ryan got out. The thought made my chest loosen. tension I'd been carrying for so long finally releasing. "Thank you," I whispered. Tommy's expression softened slightly. "You don't need to thank me. This is what protection means." That evening, Sophia arrived with wine. For you, not me. I'm driving. And ordered pizza. Because even rich people eat pizza. We sat on the living room floor, Tessa between us, watching a Disney movie while Sophia painted Tessa's tiny nails a sparkly pink. "You're good with her," I said, watching them together. Sophia smiled, but there was sadness in it. "Tommy told you? That I can't have children?" I nodded. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." She finished Tessa's pinky finger with a flourish. "I've made my peace with it. Besides, I have 7 nieces and nephews from our cousins, and now I have this little princess." She tweaked Tessa's nose gently. "If you'll let me be her honorary aunt." Tessa looked at me, her dark eyes serious. "Can Miss Sophia be my aunt? Please?" My throat tightened with emotion. Tessa had never had aunts or uncles. Ryan's family had cut us off after the divorce, and my own parents had died when I was 20. It had always been just the 2 of us against the world. But maybe it didn't have to be anymore. "If Miss Sophia wants to be your aunt," I said carefully, "then I think that would be wonderful. I want to. I want to." Tessa threw her arms around Sophia's neck, and I saw tears glisten in the other woman's eyes. When Tessa was finally asleep, Sophia and I sat on the balcony despite the cold, wrapped in blankets, looking out at the city lights. "He likes you," Sophia said abruptly. "My brother. More than he should." My heart did something complicated. "I'm a project to him. Someone to protect." "No." Sophia turned to look at me, her expression serious. "Tommy has protected lots of people. He's never brought them to his personal apartment. Never spent hours every day with them. Never looked at them the way he looks at you." I didn't know what to say to that. I'd noticed the way Tommy's eyes followed me sometimes, the way he'd lean slightly closer when we were reviewing files, the way his voice softened when he said my name. But I'd told myself it didn't mean anything, that I was imagining it. "He's a good man," Sophia continued. "I know what he does, what the family business is. But Tommy has honor, Tara. He has rules he never breaks. And one of those rules is that he doesn't take advantage of women under his protection." "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying that if you feel something for him, you should know he feels it too. But he'll never act on it as long as you're here because of obligation or debt or fear." Sophia squeezed my hand. "When your 2 weeks are up, when you're free to leave and choose to stay, that's when you'll know it's real." I thought about that conversation late into the night, lying in that too-soft bed, staring at the ceiling. Did I feel something for Tommy Castellano? Beyond gratitude, beyond the relief of having someone else handle the crisis. I thought about the way he listened when I talked. Really listened. Like my words mattered. The way he'd smiled at Tessa. Gentle and genuine. The way he'd looked when he'd talked about his mother. Vulnerable beneath all that control. He was dangerous. A criminal, no matter how much he talked about legitimizing his business. He hurt people. Probably killed people. Operated in a world I wanted nothing to do with. But he'd also saved us. Protected us. Given us safety when we'd had none. On day 10, everything changed. Tommy arrived early, his expression grim. "We need to talk, privately." I followed him into the study, my stomach knotting with anxiety. "What's wrong?" Ryan made bail. Tommy's voice was flat, controlled fury beneath the surface. "Someone posted $1 million. He was released an hour ago." The room tilted. "How? You said he couldn't make bail." "He shouldn't have been able to." Tommy's hands clenched into fists. Someone with significant resources wanted him out. "I'm working on finding out who, but in the meantime, You and Tessa need to stay here. Don't go out, not even with Sophia. Victor and 2 other guards will be posted outside 24/7. Fear clawed at my throat. He's coming for us. He'll try. Tommy moved closer, his presence somehow reassuring despite the danger. But he won't succeed. This apartment is a fortress, Tara. The only way in is through that elevator, and it requires both a key card and a code. The building has security on every floor. He can't get to you here. But I can't stay locked in here forever. You won't have to. Something dangerous flashed in Tommy's eyes. Ryan made a mistake leaving prison. Out here, he's vulnerable. I'll find him before he finds you. And then what? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. Tommy was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft, but implacable. Then the threat will be eliminated permanently. I should have been horrified. Should have recoiled from the casual way he talked about killing someone. But all I could think about was Tessa, about the bag of her clothes in Ryan's car, about the fake ID and the flight to Mexico. Okay, I whispered. Tommy's eyes widened slightly, surprise breaking through his controlled expression. Okay? He was going to take my daughter. He was going to make me think she was gone forever. My voice was shaking but determined. So yes. Okay. Do what you need to do. Something shifted in Tommy's expression, a wall coming down I hadn't even known was there. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, could see the flecks of amber in his dark eyes. Tara, he said softly, you need to understand what you're agreeing to. I understand perfectly. I met his gaze without flinching. I'm agreeing to let you protect my daughter by any means necessary. I'm agreeing to trust you with our lives. I'm agreeing that some threats can't be handled by restraining orders and police reports. Tommy reached up, his hand cupping my cheek with surprising gentleness. You're stronger than I thought. Tougher. I'm a mother, I said simply. I do what I have to do. His thumb traced along my cheekbone, and I found myself leaning into his touch, my heart racing for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. The air between us felt charged, electric, like something was about to break. Tommy, I whispered, not sure what I was asking for. Not yet, he said, his voice rough. Not while you still need me. Not while protection and obligation are tangled up in whatever this is between us. He stepped back, and the loss of his warmth felt like a physical ache. When you're safe, when Ryan is handled, when you're free to choose, that's when we'll have this conversation. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Stay here, Tommy said, back to business, though I could still see the heat in his eyes. Stay safe. I'll handle the rest. He left, and I sank into the desk chair, my hand going to my cheek where his touch had been. Sophia found me there 20 minutes later. He told you about Ryan. I nodded. And I told him to do what he needs to do. I looked up at her. Does that make me a bad person? Sophia sat on the edge of the desk. It makes you a mother. There's a difference. She paused. He touched your face. I saw when I came in, before you noticed me. My cheeks flushed. It didn't mean anything. It meant everything. Sophia smiled. But he's right to wait. Tommy needs to know that when you choose him, if you choose him, it's because you want him, not because you need him. I don't know what I feel, I admitted. You will. Sophia stood, squeezing my shoulder. Trust me. When this is over, you'll know exactly what you feel. And so will he. The next 3 days were tense. Every sound made me jump. Every time Tessa was out of my sight for more than a minute, panic clawed at my throat. Victor and his team rotated shifts outside the apartment door, their presence both reassuring and terrifying because it meant the danger was real. Tommy came by twice a day, morning and evening, always with updates. We've tracked Ryan to a motel in Gary, Indiana. He's moving every few hours, using cash, staying off-grid. But he'll slip up. They always do. On day 13, at 2 a.m, my phone rang. Tommy's name on the screen. I answered, my heart pounding. What happened? It's over. His voice was flat, exhausted. Ryan Davies is dead. Self-inflicted gunshot wound when police surrounded his location. He knew he wasn't getting out of it this time. I should have felt something. Grief, maybe, or horror, or even satisfaction. Instead, I just felt numb. You're sure? I'm sure. I saw the body myself. Tommy paused. Are you okay? I don't know. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at nothing. He was Tessa's father. I should feel something. He was a man who tried to destroy you and kidnap your daughter. Tommy said gently. What you feel or don't feel is exactly right. When can we go home? I asked. Tomorrow, if you want. But Tara... He hesitated. Your house in Pilsen. He broke in. There's damage, and there are memories. You might not want to go back there. He was right. The thought of sleeping in that house, in the bedroom where I'd heard his footsteps, made my skin crawl. I don't know where else to go. You could stay here. The words were careful, measured. Not as someone under protection, as someone I'm asking to stay. You and Tessa. For as long as you want. My throat tightened. Tommy, I can't just move in with you. That's not. We don't. I know. I could hear the smile in his voice. But think about it. Sophia would never forgive me if I let her new niece disappear. And I'd miss our afternoon sessions, discussing healthcare facilities and arguing about profit margins. Is that all you'd miss? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Silence on the other end of the line. Then quietly, no, that's not all I'd miss. My heart did that complicated thing again. That flutter of fear and anticipation and something else I wasn't ready to name. I'll think about it, I whispered. That's all I ask. Another pause. Get some rest, Tara. It's really over now. You're safe. I hung up and sat in the darkness, listening to the quiet sounds of the apartment around me. Tessa's soft breathing from her room, the hum of the heating system, the distant sounds of the city beyond the windows. Safe. I'd spent so long being afraid, being hunted, being alone, that I'd forgotten what safety felt like. But sitting there in Tommy Castellano's apartment, with his guards outside the door and his promise hanging in the air between us, I finally remembered. Safety felt like hope. And maybe, just maybe, it felt like the beginning of something more. Morning came with unexpected clarity. I'd barely slept, my mind churning through everything that had happened. Everything Tommy had offered. Everything I felt and didn't want to feel. When I finally gave up on rest and padded into the kitchen at 6 a.m., I found Tommy already there, leaning against the counter with a coffee cup in his hand, still wearing yesterday's clothes. His tie was gone, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his hair slightly messed from running his hands through it. He looked exhausted and human and beautiful in the pale dawn light. "You're here early," I said, my voice still rough with sleep. "I never left." He straightened, setting down his cup. Victor and the team stood down at 4. I wanted to make sure everything was secure before I went home. Then I thought I'd make coffee and wait to see if you were actually going to sleep, or if you'd eventually give up like I did. "You've been here all night?" I moved closer, noticing the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. "Tommy, you should have gone home, got some rest." "I couldn't." His voice was quiet. "Not until I knew for certain that you were safe. that it was really over. Something in my chest cracked open. This dangerous man who commanded an empire, who probably had a dozen places to be and 100 people depending on him, had spent the night in my borrowed apartment just to make sure I was okay. "Thank you," I whispered. He nodded, then poured a second cup of coffee and handed it to me. "So, have you thought about my offer?" "I've thought about nothing else." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, needing something to hold on to. "But I need to understand what you're really asking. Are you offering us a place to stay temporarily while I figure things out? Or are you asking for something more?" Tommy was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes studying my face. "I'm asking for a chance," he said finally. "A chance to see if this, whatever is between us, is real. To see if it can survive outside of crisis and protection and obligation." My heart hammered against my ribs. "I have a daughter, Tommy. Everything I do, every choice I make, has to be about what's best for her. I can't just jump into something with you because I'm grateful, or because you make me feel things I haven't felt in years. I'm not asking you to jump into anything." He set down his own cup and moved closer, but kept his hands to himself, respecting the space between us. "I'm asking you to stay here, in this apartment or another one I own, whatever you're comfortable with. Keep doing the consulting work for my healthcare facilities. I'll pay you properly, a real salary. Let Sophia keep being Tessa's aunt. Let me keep being, whatever I am, a friend, someone who cares about you both. And we'll see what develops." "What about your business?" I asked. "The parts that aren't legitimate? I can't have Tessa exposed to that world, Tommy. I won't. She won't be." His voice was firm. "I meant what I said about moving toward the light. The healthcare facilities are just the beginning. I'm working on divesting from the operations my father built, transitioning them to associates who can handle them. It'll take time. You don't just walk away from a legacy overnight. But I'm committed to it. Because of your mother." "Because of my mother," he agreed. "And because of you. Because for the first time, I have a reason to want something different, something better." The weight of those words settled over me like a blanket. He was offering to change his entire life, to walk away from everything he'd built, because I'd stumbled into his world by accident. It was terrifying, and thrilling, and completely overwhelming. "I need time," I said. "Not to decide if I want to try this with you. I think we both know I do. But to do it right. To let Tessa adjust to all these changes without adding the complication of her mother dating someone. To make sure my feelings are real and not just gratitude or trauma bonding or whatever else might be tangled up in this." Tommy nodded slowly. "How much time?" 3 months. The number felt right as I said it. 3 months where we're friends, where we work together on your healthcare projects, where Sophia gets to be Tessa's aunt and you get to be Uncle Tommy, maybe. 3 months where you prove that the man I'm seeing now is who you really are, and I prove that I can stand on my own feet without needing to be rescued. A slow smile spread across Tommy's face. Uncle Tommy, I like that. And at the end of 3 months, if we both still want to try this, then we go on a proper date. With flowers and reservations and all the normal relationship things. Deal. He extended his hand, and I took it. But instead of shaking, he raised my hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to my knuckles, his eyes never leaving mine. 3 months, Tara Mitchell. And then I'm taking you to the best restaurant in Chicago and courting you properly. Heat flooded through me at the old-fashioned word, at the promise in his voice. Courting? My father is very traditional. Tommy's smile was genuine now, the exhaustion fading from his face. He'll expect me to do this right, which means Sophia will probably insist on chaperoning our first few dates, and my cousin Marco will give you the shovel talk, And there will be family dinners where everyone interrogates you about your intentions. I laughed, the sound surprising me. That sounds terrifying. It is. He released my hand reluctantly. But it's also how we love. Completely, intensely with everyone involved. If you're going to be part of my life, you're going to be part of my family. All of it. The word family made my throat tight. I'd been alone for so long, just Tessa and me against the world. The thought of having people, of belonging somewhere, of not having to carry everything by myself, it was almost too much to hope for. Okay, I said. 3 months, friends and family, and then we see what happens. And then we see what happens, Tommy agreed. The sound of small feet padding down the hallway made us both turn. Tessa appeared in the doorway, Mr. Unicorn dragging from one hand, Aurora the Pegasus clutched in the other, her dark curls a wild tangle around her sleep-flushed face. Mommy? She rubbed her eyes with the back of her hand. Why are you awake? It's still dark outside. I couldn't sleep, baby. I moved to pick her up, settling her on my hip even though she was getting too big for it. Mr. Tommy couldn't sleep either, so we're having coffee and talking about grown-up things. Tessa looked at Tommy with serious eyes. Are you sad? The question caught him off guard, vulnerability flashing across his face. A little bit tired, Principessa, but not sad. How could I be sad when I get to have coffee with you and your beautiful mama? Tessa considered this, then held out Aurora. Aurora can make you feel better. She has magic healing powers. Tommy took the stuffed Pegasus with unexpected gentleness, holding it carefully like it was made of glass. Thank you, Tessa. That's very kind of you. You're welcome. Tessa yawned hugely. Can I have pancakes? With chocolate chips? I asked, already knowing the answer. With chocolate chips, she confirmed. Tommy set Aurora on the counter and rolled up his sleeves. Then I'll make them. It's the least I can do for Aurora lending me her healing powers. I watched as he moved around the kitchen with surprising competence, finding the ingredients Maria kept stocked, mixing batter while Tessa sat on the counter and supervised, making sure he added enough chocolate chips. He was patient with her corrections, asking her opinion on everything, treating her like her input mattered. This was the Tommy Castellano no one else saw. Not the Mafia boss, not the dangerous man who could have people killed with a phone call, but just a man making pancakes for a 5-year-old girl who had decided he was worthy of her magic Pegasus. My phone buzzed on the counter, a text from Sophia. Maria says Tommy is still there, and that he's making pancakes. I'm coming over immediately. This I have to see. 20 minutes later, Sophia burst through the elevator doors with bags from the bakery and a knowing smile. Tommy Castellano, master of the Chicago underworld, making chocolate chip pancakes. I'm taking pictures. The family will never believe me. Don't you dare, Tommy threatened, but there was no heat in it. Too late. Sophia snapped several photos on her phone. Wait until Papa sees these. He'll be so proud. The mention of their father made me remember. How is he? Your father? I haven't asked. Sophia's expression softened. He's doing well. The cardiac rehab is going great. He asks about you constantly, wants to know when he can thank you properly for saving his life. He doesn't need to thank me, I said. I was just doing my job. You saved his life, Tara. Tommy set a plate of perfect pancakes in front of Tessa. In my family, that's not nothing. He wants to meet you. Officially. Have you over for Sunday dinner. Introduce you to everyone. Make sure you understand how grateful we are. The thought of meeting Tommy's father, of being welcomed into his family home, should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a warm anticipation spreading through my chest. I'd like that. Good. Sophia helped herself to a pancake, eating it with her fingers. Because Papa already told Nona, and Nona is planning the menu. You're coming this Sunday whether you like it or not. The next few weeks developed a rhythm that felt both surreal and surprisingly natural. I officially accepted Tommy's job offer, working 4 days a week on his healthcare initiatives from an office he set up in the apartment. The salary he offered made me dizzy, more than double what I'd made as a nurse, with full benefits for both Tessa and me. It's too much, I'd protested. It's what the position is worth, he'd countered. You're transforming how we approach healthcare, Tara. The nursing home in Bridgeport that you redesigned. Satisfaction scores are up 40% in just 3 weeks. The staff retention rate has already improved. That's valuable work. I threw myself into it, using everything I'd learned from years in understaffed, underfunded hospitals. We implemented better scheduling systems, raised wages, hired additional staff, brought in mental health support for caregivers. Tommy backed every suggestion I made, even the ones his financial people said would cut into profits. Profit isn't everything, he'd tell them in meetings I sometimes attended. Reputation is worth more than money. When people know our facilities actually take care of their loved ones, they'll choose us over cheaper options. He was right. Within a month, all 3 of his healthcare facilities had waiting lists. Tessa thrived. Sophia took her to museums and parks, taught her Italian phrases that she'd proudly repeat to Tommy, helped her learn to read picture books. She started kindergarten at a private school near the apartment. Tommy had insisted on covering the tuition as part of my employment package, and came home every day bursting with stories about her new friends and her teacher, Ms. Wilson, who had a fish tank in the classroom. She never asked about Ryan. I'd told her carefully, with Sophia's help, that her father had gone away and wouldn't be coming back, that sometimes grown-ups made bad choices and had consequences. She'd nodded solemnly, then asked if Uncle Tommy would still take her to the aquarium like he'd promised. Uncle Tommy. The nickname had stuck, and watching them together made my heart ache in the best way. Tommy never brushed her off, never treated her like an inconvenience. He showed up to her school play when I couldn't leave a meeting. He learned the names of all her stuffed animals and their intricate backstories. He carried her on his shoulders through the Lincoln Park Zoo and let her put butterfly stickers on his expensive briefcase. And true to his word, he kept things carefully platonic between us. We worked together, ate meals together, fell into easy conversation about everything from hospital administration to our favorite books to his family's history. But he never crossed the line, never made me feel like I owed him anything more than friendship. But I felt the tension anyway. The way his eyes would linger on me when he thought I wasn't looking. The brush of his hand against mine when we reached for the same file. The way his voice dropped when he said my name, warm and intimate. The way my pulse would race when he walked into a room, when he smiled at something Tessa said, when I caught him watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Sophia noticed. Of course. You're both being ridiculous, she informed me 6 weeks into our arrangement. The sexual tension is so thick I could cut it with a knife. We have an agreement, I said, even as my cheeks flushed. 3 months. We're only halfway through. And you're going to spontaneously combust before then, Sophia predicted. Mark my words. Sunday dinners at the Castellano family home became a regular event. Their father, Anthony, lived in a sprawling house in Oak Park, surrounded by children and grandchildren and cousins who came and went in a constant flow of noise and affection. The first time we arrived, I'd been terrified. But Anthony had taken my hands in his, tears in his eyes, and thanked me in Italian before pulling me into a gentle hug. You gave me more time, he'd said in accented English. More time with my family. How do I repay such a gift? You don't, I'd said. Seeing you healthy is payment enough. His wife, Lucia, Nona to everyone, had wrapped me in an embrace that smelled of garlic and rosemary, and immediately declared that I was too thin and needed feeding. Tessa had been adopted as the family's newest member within minutes, swept up in a chaos of cousins who treated her like she'd always been there. And Tommy. Tommy watched all of it with an expression of contentment I'd never seen before. Like pieces were finally fitting together. Like a picture he'd been trying to complete was finally whole. "Your family is wonderful," I told him later, as we stood on the back porch while Tessa played with her new cousins in the yard. "They're yours too now," he said simply. "That's what this means, Tara. You saved my father's life. Your family." "Even if things don't work out between us?" I asked. "Even if at the end of 3 months we decide we're better as friends?" Tommy looked at me, his dark eyes serious. "Even then, you and Tessa are Castellanos now, whether we're together or not. That's forever." The certainty in his voice made my throat tight. I'd spent so long being alone, protecting Tessa from a world that felt hostile and dangerous. And now we had this huge, chaotic, loving family that had claimed us as their own. "Thank you," I whispered. He smiled, and something in that smile made my heart skip. "You don't need to thank me. This is what family does." At week 8, everything shifted again. I'd gone back to my house in Pilsen, or what was left of it. Tommy had offered to hire contractors to repair the damage from Ryan's break-in, but I'd needed to see it for myself, to face those memories before I could decide what to do with the place. Sophia and Victor came with me, Sophia for moral support, and Victor for security. The house looked smaller than I remembered, shabbier. The broken window was boarded up, the doorframe splintered where Ryan had forced his way in. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it that night. My coffee cup still on the kitchen counter, Tessa's toys scattered across the living room floor, my grandmother's Afghan draped over the couch. "What do you want to do with it?" Sophia asked gently. I looked around at the place that had been my sanctuary, my grandmother's gift, the only home Tessa had ever known, and realized I didn't want it anymore. Didn't want to sleep in rooms where Ryan had broken in. Didn't want Tessa growing up in a neighborhood where I'd never felt completely safe. "Sell it," I said. "Use the money for Tessa's college fund. We'll start somewhere new." "Or," Sophia said carefully, "you could stay where you are. Tommy's apartment. Make it official. We have 6 more weeks on our agreement. Tara." Sophia turned to face me fully. "You're in love with my brother. He's in love with you. Everyone can see it except apparently the 2 of you. What are you waiting for?" "I'm waiting to be sure," I said. "To know that this isn't just gratitude or trauma bonding or maybe," Sophia interrupted, "you're scared. Because you trusted Ryan and he hurt you. And now you're terrified that trusting Tommy will end the same way." The words hit too close to home. I sank onto my grandmother's couch, my hands shaking. What if I'm making a mistake? What if I'm seeing what I want to see instead of what's really there? Sophia sat beside me, taking my hands in hers. "Tommy isn't Ryan. You know that, right? He's not perfect. He's done things you probably don't want to know about, things that keep him up at night. But he's honest about who he is. He's never pretended to be something he's not, and he would die before he let anyone hurt you or Tessa." "I know," I whispered. "Then what are you really afraid of?" I closed my eyes, letting the truth surface. "I'm afraid that if I let myself love him completely, if I let Tessa get even more attached than she already is, and then something goes wrong, I don't think we'd survive it. Not after everything we've already been through." "Nothing is guaranteed, Tara." Sophia's voice was gentle. "But I've never seen my brother like this. He's had girlfriends before. Women who wanted his money or his power or the thrill of being with someone dangerous. He never let any of them matter. But you matter. You and Tessa have changed him in ways I didn't think were possible." I thought about that conversation all the way back to Lincoln Park, through dinner with Tessa, through her bedtime routine. After she was asleep, I found myself standing at the window, looking out at the city lights, thinking about fear and trust and taking chances. My phone buzzed. A text from Tommy. Can't sleep. You? Me neither, I typed back. Too much on my mind. Want company? I'm downstairs. Didn't want to intrude, but thought I'd offer. I should have said no. Should have maintained the boundaries we'd established. Instead, I found myself typing, "Come up." He arrived 5 minutes later, still in jeans and a t-shirt instead of his usual suits, his hair slightly damp like he'd just showered. He looked younger like this, more approachable, though no less devastating. "Hey," he said softly, stepping out of the elevator. "Hey." I stayed by the window, needing the distance. "I went to the house today, in Pilsen." His expression shifted to concern. "How was it?" "Harder than I expected. Easier than I feared." I wrapped my arms around myself. "I'm going to sell it. Start fresh somewhere new." "Or stay here," Tommy said, echoing his sister. "Make this home." "For 3 months? Or longer?" He moved closer, his eyes never leaving mine. "As long as you want, Tara. Forever, if you'll let me." My heart hammered against my ribs. "We still have 6 weeks." "Then we have 6 weeks." He stopped a few feet away, giving me space. "But I need you to know something. I meant what I said about courting you properly, about doing this right. But I also need you to know that I'm already gone for you. Have been since the night I watched you sleep in that hospital chair beside my father, completely exhausted, but refusing to leave his side. So whenever you're ready, 6 weeks from now, or 6 months, or 6 years, I'll be here, waiting." The honesty in his voice broke something open inside me. All the fear, all the caution, all the careful protection I'd built around my heart. It cracked and shattered, leaving me standing there with the truth I'd been trying to avoid. I was already in love with Tommy Castellano. Had been for weeks, maybe longer, and no amount of careful waiting was going to change that. What if we don't wait? The words came out before I could stop them. What if 6 weeks was always arbitrary and we both know what we want? Tommy went very still. "Tara, are you sure? Because once we cross this line, there's no going back. I meant what I said about forever." "I'm sure." I moved toward him, closing the distance between us. "I'm terrified, and it's probably too soon and I don't have all the answers. But I'm sure about you. About us. About wanting to try." His hand came up to cup my face, his touch gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. "Say it again." "I'm sure," I whispered. "I want this. I want you." Tommy's smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face. "Thank God," he breathed, "because 6 weeks was killing me." And then he kissed me. The kiss was nothing like I expected. Not urgent or demanding, but slow and thorough, like Tommy was memorizing the taste of me, the feel of my lips against his. His hands framed my face with a gentleness that made my heart ache, his thumbs stroking along my cheekbones as he kissed me like I was something precious, something worth savoring. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "I've been wanting to do that for 2 months, he said, his voice rough. "Every time you walked into a room, every time you smiled at something Tessa said, every time you got that fierce look in your eyes when you were fighting for better patient care, I wanted to kiss you and tell you that you were mine." "I am yours," I whispered, the words feeling both terrifying and right. "But you have to promise me something. Anything. Promise me that you'll always be honest with me, about who you are, what you do, the parts of your life that are dangerous. I can handle the truth, Tommy. What I can't handle is being lied to again." His expression grew serious. "I promise. No secrets between us, even when the truth is ugly." He paused. "Which means I need to tell you something now, before we go any further. My stomach clenched with anxiety. What? Ryan's death. It wasn't suicide. Tommy's voice was steady, his eyes never leaving mine. The official report says it was, and that story will never change. But the truth is, I had him killed. He was planning something. I don't know what. But my people intercepted communication between him and some associates. He was still a threat, even from that motel. So I eliminated the threat. I should have been horrified, should have pulled away, called him a murderer, questioned everything I thought I knew about him. But instead, I just felt a cold sort of relief. Ryan was gone, truly gone, because Tommy had made sure he could never hurt us again. Thank you, I said quietly. Tommy blinked, clearly surprised. You're not upset? I'm upset that you had to do it, that we live in a world where sometimes that's the only solution. I took his hands in mine. But I'm not upset that he's gone. I'm not upset that you protected us. And I'm not going to pretend to have moral high ground when my daughter is safe because of what you did. Something like relief washed over Tommy's face. Most women would run screaming. I'm not most women. I squeezed his hands. And you're not most men. We both know what you are, Tommy. What your family does. I'm choosing you anyway. But I need you to know that Tessa comes first. Always. If your world ever threatens her safety, if she's ever in danger because of who you are, then we leave, Tommy interrupted firmly. All of us. I have resources, Tara. Money in accounts that can't be traced, properties in countries with no extradition, identities that are completely clean. If my world ever threatens you or Tessa, we disappear. The three of us. I won't choose the family business over you. I can't. The certainty in his voice, the way he'd already planned for our escape if it became necessary, made my throat tight with emotion. You've thought about this? Every day since you walked into my life. He pulled me closer, his arms wrapping around me. You and Tessa are my priority now. Everything else is secondary. I let myself lean into his strength, breathing in his scent, feeling the steady beat of his heart against my cheek. For so long, I'd carried everything alone. The fear, the responsibility, the exhaustion of being the only one protecting my daughter. And now I had this. Someone strong enough to share the burden. Someone who loved us enough to walk away from everything, if that's what it took to keep us safe. I love you, I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. I know it's too soon, and I know we should wait and be sensible. But I love you, Tommy. I think I have for weeks. His arms tightened around me. I love you too, he said into my hair. So much it terrifies me. I've never felt this way about anyone. Never wanted to build a life with someone. Never imagined having a family beyond my blood relatives. But then you saved my father's life, and I started watching you, learning about you. And you were so fierce and brave and strong even when you were falling apart. You were everything I didn't know I needed. We stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, neither of us willing to break the moment. Eventually, though, reality intruded. I should go, Tommy said reluctantly. It's late, and Tessa will be up early. You could stay. The offer surprised us both. We're not ready for that yet. But you could sleep on the couch, wake up with us, have breakfast together like a family. Tommy's smile was brilliant. I'd like that. Very much. So he stayed, and in the morning, Tessa found us both in the kitchen making pancakes again. This time with Tommy teaching me the secret to getting them perfectly fluffy, his hands guiding mine, his breath warm against my neck. When Tessa patted in, rubbing sleep from her eyes, she stopped and looked at us with solemn assessment. Are you and Uncle Tommy doing kissing now? She asked bluntly. I nearly dropped the spatula. Tommy just laughed. Would that be okay with you, Principessa? Tessa considered this, her 5-year-old mind working through the implications. Will you still take me to the aquarium? Of course. And will you still let me put stickers on your briefcase? Always. And will you make Mommy happy? Because sometimes she cries at night when she thinks I'm sleeping, and I don't like when she's sad. My heart broke at the admission. I'd thought I'd been so careful, so quiet in my moments of grief and fear. But children noticed everything. Tommy knelt down to Tessa's level, his expression serious. I'm going to do everything I can to make your mom happy, Tessa. And to make you happy too. But that means some things are going to change. I'm going to be around more. I'm going to take you and your mom on dates. And eventually, if everyone agrees, we might become a real family. Would you be okay with that? Tessa looked at me, seeking guidance. I nodded, letting her know it was okay to be honest. Will I have to call you Daddy? She asked, uncertainty in her voice. Only if you want to, Tommy said gently. You can keep calling me Uncle Tommy forever if that feels right. Or you can call me Dad, or Papa, or nothing at all. Whatever makes you comfortable. Tessa thought about this, then nodded decisively. Okay, you can do kissing with Mommy, but not too much because it's gross. Tommy laughed, standing and ruffling her hair. Deal. Minimal kissing in front of you. The weeks that followed were a revelation. Tommy was present in ways I hadn't known to hope for. Not just physically there, but emotionally available, genuinely interested in building a life with us. He came to Tessa's school events, helped with her homework, patiently listened to her increasingly elaborate stories about the adventures of Mr. Unicorn and Aurora. He took me on actual dates, dinners at restaurants where he'd reserved private rooms, walks through the Art Institute where he told me about his mother's love of Impressionist paintings, a weekend trip to a cabin in Wisconsin where we could be alone while Sophia watched Tessa, and where he made love to me with a tenderness that brought tears to my eyes. You're beautiful, he whispered against my skin. So beautiful and strong and mine. All mine. And I was. Completely, terrifyingly his. Just as he was mine. His work on legitimizing the family business accelerated. I watched as he systematically divested from the operations his father had built, transferring control to cousins and associates while he focused on the legal enterprises, the healthcare facilities that were flourishing under our combined management, a construction company that he cleaned up and restructured, investments in legitimate businesses that needed capital. It's not perfect, he admitted one night as we reviewed financial reports in his study. There are still connections to the old world that I can't completely sever without putting people at risk. But in 5 years, maybe 10, the Castellano name will mean healthcare and construction, not protection rackets and underground gambling. That's all I can ask, I said. That you're trying. That you're moving toward the light instead of staying in the shadows. 3 months after Tommy had kissed me for the first time, Sophia announced she had news. We were at Sunday dinner, the whole family gathered around Anthony and Lucia's massive dining table, when she stood and clinked her wine glass. I have an announcement, she said, her face glowing. I'm going to be a mother. The table erupted in cheers and questions. Sophia laughed, holding up her hands. Not biologically, obviously, but I've been approved for adoption. A little girl, 3 years old, from Italy. Her name is Julia, and I get to bring her home next month. I watched as the family surrounded Sophia with hugs and tears and excited planning, and felt Tommy's hand find mine under the table, squeezing gently. She's been waiting for this for years, he murmured. Meeting you and Tessa, seeing how good she is with children, it gave her the courage to pursue adoption. You did that. We did that, I corrected. All of us. After dinner, while Tessa played with her cousins and the adults lingered over coffee, Anthony pulled me aside. "Walk with me," he said, gesturing to the garden. I followed him outside, into the crisp November air. He moved slowly, still recovering from his heart attack, but with determination. We walked in silence for a few moments before he spoke. "My son loves you," he said simply. "More than I've ever seen him love anyone. You and your daughter, you've changed him, made him remember what it means to have something worth protecting beyond power and territory." "He's changed us too," I admitted, "given us safety, family, hope, things we didn't have before." Anthony stopped, turning to face me. "In our world, family is everything. Blood, yes, but also the bonds we choose. You saved my life, Tara. That makes you family in the truest sense. But beyond that, you make my son happy. You give him a reason to build something better, something clean. For that, I am grateful beyond words." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. This was my mother's, Tommy's grandmother. She wore it every day of her marriage, and when she died, she left it to me to give to whomever Tommy chose to spend his life with. "I'd like you to have it." My hands trembled as I opened the box. Inside was a ring. Not an engagement ring, but a stunning emerald surrounded by small diamonds, set in platinum. It was elegant and timeless, clearly an heirloom of significant value. "I can't accept this," I said, even as my heart swelled with emotion. "It's too much." "You can, and you will," Anthony said firmly. "Because you're already family, Tara. Whether you marry my son or not, whether you take our name or not, you're a Castellano now. You and Tessa both. This ring is just a symbol of what's already true." Tears spilled down my cheeks as he slipped the ring onto my right hand, not the engagement finger, but the one that signified family, belonging. It fit perfectly, like it had been made for me. "Thank you," I whispered. "For this, for welcoming us, for raising a son who knows how to love." Anthony pulled me into a gentle hug. "Thank you for saving my life, for giving me more time with my family, for making my son happy. These are gifts beyond price." That night, after we'd returned to the apartment and Tessa was asleep, I showed Tommy the ring. He looked at it, then at me, his eyes suspiciously bright. "He gave you Nonna's ring," he said softly. "Do you know what that means? That I'm family. That you're his daughter now." Tommy took my hand, studying the ring on my finger. "My father doesn't give that ring lightly. My sisters don't have it. My cousins don't have it. He's been saving it for the woman I chose to build my life with." "And does he have good taste?" I asked, trying to lighten the moment before I started crying again. Tommy pulled me close, his lips finding mine in a kiss that was both tender and possessive. "The best taste," he murmured against my mouth. "Because he chose you for me, and you're perfect." "I'm not perfect," I protested. "You're perfect for me." He kissed me again, deeper this time. "Perfect for Tessa, perfect for this family, just perfect." That Christmas, Tommy proposed officially. Not with Nonna's ring, that stayed on my right hand, a symbol of family, but with a stunning diamond that he'd had custom made, the band engraved with both mine and Tessa's names intertwined with his. He did it on Christmas morning, with Tessa present, getting down on one knee in his parents' living room surrounded by the entire extended family. "Tara Mitchell," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "You saved my father's life, and in doing so, you saved mine too. You gave me a reason to want something better, to build something clean, to imagine a future beyond what I'd always known. You gave me yourself and your beautiful daughter, and you gave me hope. Will you marry me?" Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of the gift you've given me?" I looked around the room at the family that had claimed us, at Sophia bouncing excitedly with little Julia on her hip, at Anthony and Lucia with tears in their eyes, at Tessa watching with wide eyes full of hope. "Yes," I said, my voice breaking. "Yes, I'll marry you." Tessa squealed with delight as Tommy slipped the ring onto my finger, as the family erupted in cheers, as he stood and kissed me in front of everyone with a passion that made someone whistle and someone else tell us to save it for the honeymoon. "I love you," Tommy whispered against my lips. "Forever, Tara. You and Tessa and any other children we're blessed with. Forever." "Forever," I agreed, and meant it with every fiber of my being. We were married that spring, in a ceremony that blended tradition with our new family. Tessa was our flower girl, wearing a dress Sophia had commissioned that made her look like a princess. Sophia stood as my maid of honor, with little Julia as an additional flower girl. Tommy's cousins and associates filled the church, along with my colleagues from the hospital and the staff from our healthcare facilities. Anthony walked me down the aisle, his arm steady despite his age, his eyes bright with tears. "My daughter," he whispered as he placed my hand in Tommy's. "Take care of my son." "I will," I promised, "and he'll take care of us." The reception was at Anthony and Lucia's house, transformed into a fairy tale, with lights strung through the trees and tables, laden with more food than we could possibly eat. Tessa danced with Tommy, her small feet balanced on his as he waltzed her around the makeshift dance floor, both of them laughing. "May I?" a voice asked, and I turned to find Anthony offering his hand. We danced slowly, his movements careful but sure. "You know," he said, "when I had that heart attack, when I was lying in that hospital bed thinking I was going to die, I prayed for one thing: more time with my family. And you gave me that, Tara. You gave me years I wouldn't have had." "I was just doing my job," I said, the familiar refrain. "You were doing what you were meant to do," he corrected, "saving lives, making families whole. And now you've done it again, not just for me, but for Tommy. You've saved him from a life of shadows, given him a reason to step into the light. That's a gift beyond measure." After the reception, after the guests had left and Tessa had fallen asleep in Sophia's arms to be taken home by her and Lucia, Tommy and I finally had a moment alone. We stood on the terrace overlooking the garden, his arms wrapped around me from behind, both of us watching the sunset over Chicago. "Happy?" he asked, his lips brushing my temple. "Terrified," I admitted, "and happier than I've ever been in my life. How is that possible?" "Because the best things are always a little scary." He turned me in his arms, his dark eyes holding mine. "Because taking chances, letting yourself love, building a life with someone, that requires courage. And you, Tara Castellano, are the bravest person I know." Tara Castellano, my new name, my new identity. A name that came with protection and power and a family that would die for me. A name that meant I would never be alone again, never have to fight by myself, never have to watch my daughter grow up afraid. "I love you," I said, reaching up to cup his face. So much it still scares me sometimes. "Good," Tommy said, that familiar intensity burning in his gaze. "Because I love you enough to be terrifying, enough to move mountains, enough to walk away from everything I've ever known if that's what it takes to keep you safe, enough to build an empire in the light instead of the shadows, because you deserve to live without fear." He kissed me then, deep and thorough and full of promise. A kiss that said we were in this together, forever, no matter what came. A kiss that tasted like hope and new beginnings, and the kind of love I'd stopped believing existed. When we finally pulled apart, both breathless, I smiled up at him. "Take me home, Mr. Castellano." "Anything for you, Mrs. Castellano," he murmured. "Anything at all." And as we drove back through the city lights toward the apartment that had become our home, toward the life we were building together, I thought about how strange fate could be. How a mistaken text message, a midnight rescue, a dangerous man with a code of honor had transformed everything. I'd spent so long running from danger, trying to protect my daughter, barely surviving. And then Tommy Castellano had been waiting in my living room like some dark guardian angel, ready to change everything. He'd given us safety, family, love. He'd given Tessa a father who adored her, aunts and uncles and cousins who claimed her as their own. He'd given me a partner strong enough to share the burden, brave enough to change his entire world for us. And in return, I'd given him something just as precious. A reason to be more than his legacy demanded. A chance to build something good from his family's dark foundation. A love that was worth fighting for. We'd both been saved that night, in different ways. Both been given a second chance at building the lives we wanted instead of the ones we'd inherited. And as Tommy carried me across the threshold of our home, as I heard Tessa's sleepy voice calling for us from her room where Sophia must have brought her back, as I felt the weight of Nonna's ring on one hand and my wedding band on the other, I knew with absolute certainty that we were exactly where we were meant to be. Together, safe,